Hello friends, you're with the Lonesome Gamer and I'm playing 7 Ages. So we've done the first age, so we entered the second age now. And actually I gotta do the progress, I forgot that. I've played the first round of the second age. Again, quite a few empires started. Our first American empire started, the Olmec, right here in Mexico. And they right away made 2 points because home country and the biggest in the Americas. They want to have the most possible cities. That's not going to be so easy, but well, I think I'm going to go north with them, try to grab these fertile land areas up here in North America, and we'll see how long they can survive there. I mean, sooner or later we might then see some Indians showing up or so, but for now I think they're good. And of course the Inca might come, or the Maya, I'm not sure which one shows up here, but there's definitely a risk in these areas that you get killed. Similar to here also, but okay. Then the Mitanni actually showed up right here and destroyed a second time now. The capital of Babylon was destroyed, first by the Sumerians, now by the Mitanni. And by the way, the player controlling the Olmec is also the same player who holds the Romans, player 1. The player who started the Mitanni is the guy who controls the Japanese and the early Finns. The Kushans started right here. And their goal is actually to go to India. And the problem the Indians have is that they can vacate land areas. So basically they can move their whole army toward India. Oh, wait a minute. These suckers should be here. The good thing for the Indians is, though, that they are technologically far behind these other guys. So they cannot really build good units. And they can also not build cavalry, at least not yet, so they are pretty slow, and that gives the Indians some time to prepare, so they might be able to defend themselves against that storm. That is a fate that the Chu probably will not share, because the Huns started here in Khalkha and they have a free attack immediately. By the way, do these guys maybe also have that? No, they don't. Okay, so they have a free attack immediately, and they did that, and they immediately destroyed the capital of the Chu. And that is very bad news. The Chu did a maneuver action, tried to, some of their, I mean, they were a little bit prepared, you know, they didn't spread completely out. They had somewhere in a few areas 2 units, so they could now kind of do a maneuver action and gather an army here, but this is by far not strong enough. This is one of these strong chit colors, and it's a bigger army, so I really think that the that massive dominance as the most powerful or the biggest power in the world of the Chu is possibly over. I mean, maybe they can survive for a few more turns, get a few points. You know, as long as they are biggest in Asia, they get a little bit, biggest in China. But on the other hand, they already had to pay because they do no longer control their home area. So this time they only got 1 point, which is, compared to the 4 points they made the turn before, pretty poor. On the other hand, the Finns realizing that the Chu are not doing that good anymore, they expanded, and now they have again the biggest empire in the world. You can see here all the north of Europe under their control, and that gives them 3 points, which is pretty good. Let me see what else happened. The Egypt went south and are now... Are they the biggest in Africa? Yeah, they are the biggest now in Africa. And yeah, but it's close actually, because it's also about sea areas. That means both control for the Carthaginians and the Egypt, but they were first, so they were a little lucky here that they could make it. So they got to expand a little more or consider attacking Carthage. Carthage did a production action preparing for further expansion into Europe. The Romans did exactly that. They expanded massively, and they control all these fertile land areas here up to Thrace already with their first expansion action. So they're going to produce now, make a ton of money. And in addition to that, the Romans, the Japanese, they played a gold mine, but the Romans played the blowback event card, which allowed them basically to control which empire is affected by the gold mine. So that means the Romans have now already a ton of money. After that, the Japanese played a silver mine, which could not be cancelled, and that gave them 20 additional bucks. So they are now the richest in the world, which is one of their goals. So no surprise here that they actually made a ton of points. And and in addition, there was something else going on here. We've seen a battle here. Yeah, no, it's all, yeah, the Phoenicians were destroyed and they were discarded now because it doesn't make any sense to continue with these guys. So the player here who controls the Romans and the Olmec, he discarded the Phoenicians, hoping to get something better here. Glory-wise, things have changed a bit. This guy was clearly in the lead, but in this turn he only made a single point because the Chu are in such a bad position, and actually the Etruscans were also destroyed but that already happened. I don't know, did it happen a turn before? Not sure. Anyway, so he made only a single point. This guy, however, made a ton of points. The Harappans scored their full amount of points, 4 points for them. And the Egyptians scored also 4 points. So he made 8 points. That's a ton. That brought him the lead. The green guy also, he was quite a little bit behind, but 3 points for the Finns. 4 points for the Japanese and 1 point for the Mitanni. Also gave him 8 points. So he is actually behind now, close behind in second place. And yeah, this guy here is also performing really poor at the moment. The Babylonians lost a point. The Assyrians had exactly 1 point. And because conquering cities of other countries gives the Huns a point, they also scored a point. But overall, basically, he just scored also 1 point in this situation, so it's pretty poor. And by the way, we've seen the Temple of Diana now rebuilt. It was destroyed here, and I think you can rebuild these things, and that actually happened here. So that was rebuilt by the Japanese, which gives them also another glory point. Cool. So next turn, and a few more new civilizations. The Zanga down here in the heart of Africa, basically. Controlled by the player of the Romans and the Olmec. I'm not expecting too much of them, but you know, right now they score a point for their home territory, and if they can manage to become biggest in Africa, which might be an option, it's going to be hard. They're going to compete with the Egypt. Then they're going to score another one. So. And they go to also compete with Carthage, because it's also about sea. So it's not going to be easy. No, actually, no, yeah, it's true. So that's not going to be easy. But you know, on the other hand, there's a lot of room to expand here, especially into the south and into the west. Can try to stay away from Egypt. And I'm not so sure if Egypt is going to care about us, and you know, it's just for a single point. I don't think they were going to try big campaigns here into the heart of Africa just for a single point. So maybe it's an easy way to score 2 points with these guys. It's not great, but until something better shows up, we can definitely try it. Over here, the Harappan. Oh no, wait a minute. Before we do that, here another empire showed up. These are what are these guys called? The Shams, and they are actually controlled by the same player as the one who controls the Shu. And their goal is being good in Southeast Asia, which they already are, and being the richest in the world. So right now they already scored 2 points for Southeast Asia and for their home country, so that's not bad. So over here, the Huns continue their devastation of China, but let's be honest, right now they didn't gain a lot out of this. Here they destroyed a city that gave them 1 glory point. Here they just managed to destroy a fairly big army of the Chinese, but in the end, that was nothing. You know, they don't get any points for that. They have to destroy cities or liberate cities to get glory points. The Chinese managed to rebuild a capital. They did a civilized action this turn. So now in the next turn they can again produce with a lot of efficiency. They get a ton of income, and they can also now place, for example, 3 units in this area because there is this 3 city now. So, well, I mean, for them it's not over yet. You know, they can definitely fight back, and I don't know if it's really such a good deal for this player of the Huns to continue his fight on the long term. He can try to destroy a few cities here in the north, but then he's got to start asking himself, okay, why am I doing this, you know? But we'll see how it turns out. Maybe, I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe it's not as bad. The Harappans did prepare for that march of the Kushan. You remember there was one big army that marched south, but they realized, hey, we don't stand a chance against these guys. You know, these are all modern units, modern cavalry units. These guys are all, you know, just the basic 2 units. These are dark units with a better value, and these are the worse value light units. So overall, he realized, okay, you know, this is all bullshit. That doesn't make any sense. He kind of spread out, thinking about, okay, maybe I can get biggest in Asia if the Chinese go into trouble. That would at least give me a point. But I think in the end he's going to discard these guys. It's just not worth it, and I think he might have more interesting options available. The Japanese started now building ships. They now have the technology to do so. That had two consequences. First of all, the Carthaginians didn't have the largest fleet anymore. And second of all, the Japanese will now have the option to go to the sea and maybe score a few extra victory points. That way, in addition, sea gives you a lot of income, so that will even improve their richness value. Romans did a produce action, insane amount of money, at least a lot of money, and they also had that gold mine. They spent all of it and just, you know, I think they bought about close to the maximum of units they could buy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They bought 6 units, all of them more valuable units, you know, nothing like just infantry, all of them. Yeah, I think 4 cavalry, 1 bowman, and 1 ship. So they are now in a really good shape and kind of planning to really spread out in Europe. Let me see, anything else of interest? I don't think so for the moment. And what's actually kind of funny, the Finns, they are now for a few turns the biggest empire in the world, obviously. They score a good amount of points here, 3 points, the maximum they can get. The funny thing is that they were barbarians in the first era, but now they are in the second era, which means if they want to produce in a efficient way, they need a capital. So they now actually were able to build a capital here, and yeah, it's kind of cool. They can now start building cities. Well, next turn, one new empire got started. Here, the Medes. Over here, same player as the guy who controls the Huns. They want to be big in Asia, control their home country, and be big in the world. I mean, these guys are not very promising, to be honest, but it's one of these colors which are kind of not safe. You know, basically 3 factions, 3 colors in the game can change between players. So you kind of want to make sure that once you hold one of these colors, you can kind of hold on to them. And he discarded a bad empire, and then he kind of started a new one. I think it was the Assyrians. So he discarded the Assyrians and now holds the Medes. So he could hold on to that color. And right now they give them a point, and maybe later they can score a few more points. There's a lot of chaos right now in Asia, so there is a chance that they could at least become biggest of Asia. I think 2 empires were discarded. The Babylonians down here, they were actually losing points, so that was really bad. They went away. And here the Kushan in this area here, they were just totally pointless, and they also were discarded. The Zanga spread out, and they are actually getting now in reach of being the biggest in Africa, but probably not for long, because the Egypt have they also produced a few ships, which will allow them to control the seas adjacent to Africa, and that will then bring them in a fairly comfortable position about the control of Africa. And it's kind of interesting, the control of the world, sea and land combined. Well, they might be actually pretty good in that 2 once they go into the sea. There are something like 7, yeah, it would be then 7 areas or so, and maybe they can expand it even further. Carthage also expanded a little more here. The Iberian Peninsula. They lost a ship in a tsunami here in the Western Mediterranean. These guys did an expansion, and especially the Japanese did. They used their ships now and went into the sea, and that means even worse options for Carthage. They don't hold the largest fleet anymore after they've lost that ship here, and in addition they're also just, well, at least worldwide it's not that important if they have a sea power. But the thing is that these guys now control the most areas in the world on the sea, so they made a ridiculous amount of points. They were by far the most successful guys. 1 for their home area, 2 for the world on sea, 2 for being the richest, and a wheat. So they made 6 points. That is the record until now, and it is a really good scoring. And there might be even a chance that they can grab a few of these Chinese wheat areas here, because the Chu are performing horrible. The Huns destroyed the city here, the second capital basically. They already destroyed the first here in Shanxi, and now that one here in Sichuan also was destroyed. And it was a 3 capital. A 3 city, so that means because they destroyed that, the Chu fell back 3 spaces because of the special ability of the Huns. They drop back an H, and if that happens, the Huns get the value of the city they destroyed +2 if they drop back an H. So for that battle, the Huns received 5 glory points. That was pretty good. Still, the red player is pretty far behind, but you know, he managed at least to catch up a little bit. So I don't know how long the Chu will be able to survive here. I'm not even sure if they want to hold on. They might, you know, at some point. Maybe it's getting no longer interesting for the Huns if there are no more cities to destroy. I don't know what they're going to do then, right? They don't score points simply for killing people. They want to destroy cities. So eventually they might spread out. They could try, of course, to go to India or something, but that is pretty far away. So I'm not sure what actually happens. I cannot tell that. But it is possible, if they just be patient, at some point the Chu might get an option to discover, but honestly, I don't really think so. The Romans built a great library right here, which gives them a bonus during trade. But maybe the most interesting thing, actually, apart from the battle over here, was that the Pharaoh, or the Egyptians, they adopted Christianity. So we have now our first religion on the board. You can do that. There is a Christianity artifact somewhere, and I don't know where it is. There we go, Christianity, and yeah, if you play that artifact and you're in the right age, you can do that from age 2, and you are in range of Palestine, which they definitely are, then they become Christian. And so they got a point for becoming Christian, for getting an artifact. That gives them an interesting special power, because they can now, before an action, they can move a unit following the standard rules in a neutral land and basically, I don't know, kind of convert that land to their belief system. So without an explicit maneuver action, they can simply, for example, now in the next action, they could move this guy here and in that way simply gain an additional territory, which is neat. They also have the option, instead of doing that, they could spread religious conflict. For example, they could place in an adjacent country, for example here in Uganda, they could place a disorder marker there. That is also an option they have. In addition to that, there was also an artifact, the Pope. And that was also immediately played on them. They played it basically just, one after another. So that gives them another point, obviously. And by the way, all that helps them because they want to be this cultural dominant guys. And they now have 1, 2, 3, 4 artifacts. So that's going to be hard to beat. So the Pope is... it's a strange artifact. There is a heresy card, and that means, I think, that all the Christian countries can vote for something if another country suffers from heresy or not. I think I'm not even sure what that means. If a pope is in play, this guy has all the votes. That's one thing. The other point is that there is an artifact, the Crusades, somewhere, and the Pope can actually call for a crusade. So I think only he can play this artifact, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure, but I think so. And now what that means is basically that if Palestine is controlled by a non-Christian empire, then there is this artifact placed into Palestine, and from then on, every Christian empire, not in Renaissance, may only do move actions, and if they do another action, they're going to lose 3 glory points. Now, actually, I thought I wanted to house rule that because I don't really see a big advantage for that for the empire that actually calls for a crusade. So I thought what I'm going to play is every empire but the empire that controls the Pope has to do these move actions. So the Pope can call a crusade, but then or call for a crusade, and all the other Christian empires have to respond, but not the guy who controls the Pope. I think that makes it a more powerful and also a more interesting tool, where we might see some really interesting action going on here. I'm still not totally sure. Another thing that I was thinking about is that I don't want to leave the Pope forever there. If another Christian empire gets the card, I will allow them to basically to play the card, and then the Pope changes to that empire. I think that's a little more realistic. It's not that, usually the Pope was not controlled, or however you want to call it, by a single nation or so. It changed kind of during the ages who had good connections with the Pope. And I want to represent that with this house rule here. So I think this is actually now, this has been the first turn. Oh no, it's not true. There was a new empire. Right here, the goals started by the player of Carthage. Now, to a certain degree, the Carthaginians and the Gauls kind of are rivals when it comes to Europe. On the other hand, they can try together to, maybe they can somehow manage to destroy the Romans. That would be definitely cool. The Gauls get points for being big in Europe and also for conquering areas from more advanced empires. So if they manage to capture some of these Roman areas, especially here in the east, there are also a lot of rich areas, then that will give them actually victory points. The Romans reacted a little bit. First I thought, hey, maybe I should come up with a big army. But then I thought, I don't know if that is such a great idea, because then, you know, there is a lot of open room for the Carthaginians to attack. So I kind of left my, I placed a few units more in the north, but I still left some key areas protected, like Rome or Cisalpine, also here Gaul. So I didn't want to risk too much there. If I'm going to lose a few provinces, it's not going to be good, but these are not the Huns. They are not allowed to vacate areas. So therefore, you know, the more they move around, the less impressive they're going to be. They have Boudica, and she is a tactician. So that is a threat. And yeah, I mean, I think I might actually lose a few guys, but in the end, I think yeah, I think it's going to be okay. Let me see. What else happened? The Zanga managed to trade with the Egypt. They lost the trade, but now they have also the knowledge, the option to build cavalry and ships. And that's pretty important for them, because otherwise, without these units, it's super hard to expand, right? They only have so many infantry and archers. So, yeah. Problem is, though, they kind of lost a unit here. You know, if you want to trade in a low age, you got to take that risk and go close to the other guy, which kind of invited the Egypt to move toward them. And that's now sadly what happened. So the Egypt are coming closer to the Zanga. We'll see if there will be a real competition, or if the Egypt really going to try to just destroy them. That might not be necessary, though, because the Egypt moved out with their ships here, and they control now clearly the biggest part of Africa, and it's just a few more areas, 2 or 3 or so, and they will actually control the biggest part of the world. So that would be super powerful if they can achieve that, because their strength is they can also count sea areas when it comes to controlling the world. So yeah, they're in a really good shape here. On the other hand, the Japanese up here, they've lost their whole fleet due to storms in the Yellow Sea and the adjacent areas. So that was a disaster for them, and that will, first of all, shrink their income quite a bit. And on the other hand, these 2 glory points are lost. And yeah, they clearly made less, but it's still an impressive. I mean, I think they still made 4 points, which is a good amount of points here. And the green player is definitely doing well. The only player who is in advance is this guy here, who controls Egypt, and the Harappans. They are just a totally safe empire, you know, not too big. They don't want to be big. They just want to be good in India, and they can afford to, you know, to have a few units everywhere. So even there were a few empires that could have started, one here, one there, you know, but there's a lot of resources in there, and if they just do a single maneuver action, they can gather a really impressive army, and then yeah, it's probably over, right, for that new empire. The Medes spread out to a nice, pretty size, but they're still too small to really compete with the Chu dynasty. And that's the thing, you know, these guys, they are really, really tortured by Attila and by the Huns, let's say it that way. But it doesn't really matter. They managed to recapture their home territory. The Huns are not too interested in getting there simply because that doesn't give them points. They simply want to destroy cities, right? So in the end, it's not that terrible for them because they are still big. They control China, there's no doubt. They are the biggest in Asia. They are no longer the biggest in the world, but they control their home territory. So overall, they make 3 points, which is okay. It's really not a bad. It's not a bad power. Over here, the Carthaginians played 3 artifacts: the Oracle, the Colossus, and the Great Wall, which is here and kind of protects the Iberian Peninsula against intruders from the north. They placed these 3 artifacts in a single turn that gave them 3 points. And some of the other, especially the Romans who are looking for artifacts, they're super pissed at the moment because, apart from these one-time points, Carthage doesn't necessarily want artifacts, but of course it doesn't hurt to have them. Oh yeah, another thing here we have the Huns did actually a civilize action. So you might ask yourself, civilize, that is really weird. But they definitely wanted Attila. And because they're now in the Second Age, they could get this guy. It's a strategist which allows him to basically do 2 maneuver actions in a single turn. So that is totally awesome for them. They can just rampage through Asia and destroy one city after the other. And even the Indians, the Harappans, might face them at some point. So that could be a very interesting situation when China comes to the point where basically everything is destroyed. So next turn, and I'm not done with the turn because this is now kind of a highlight of the turn, and I want to give you that. Just want to explain what happened until now. No new empires. We've seen a few battles, most minor battles. Over here, this super rich area, the Ukraine, was taken by the Gauls, taken away from the Romans. And well, first I wasn't sure. Do I want to go south, maybe here take this, and maybe after that maybe try to take these 2, you know, I possibly could have done that with a movement of 3, although I'm not even sure about that. But I decided to go this way anyway, because I wanted to take that. It gives the Romans a big income, more than 2 standard provinces. It wasn't heavily guarded. It destroys a ship, which ultimately helps Carthage, because and Carthage is controlled by the same player, because the Romans Carthage wants to have the biggest fleet, and it's obviously good if the Romans have less ships. And it also takes away a victory points, a direct victory points from the Romans. The Romans want these wheat victory points. So I think ultimately it was the most effective move. And maybe it's not so much about overrunning the Romans or something, but you know, just about slowly suffocate them, you know, just from one side growing, getting more powerful, maybe stealing here and there province, and the same from the other side. Maybe we can just take Hannibal to take away one or two massive provinces, but we'll see about that. So, apart from that, we've seen a lot of production going on. The Carthaginians produced a ton of stuff. The Egyptians did the same. They produced a nice little army here in preparation to attack these rich areas here and go for glory of being the biggest in the world. The Mitanni also produced, trying to defend themselves a little bit. These guys spread out because they want to be rich, so they want to control a big area with as little people as possible. These guys took some fertile areas, which increases their rate of urbanizing, and that is one of their goals. And now what happened is the Harappans kind of prepared for an attack of the Huns. So they basically did a maneuver action, took a lot of their powerful units and brought them here. And the Huns destroyed a city in Tibet, which gave them a victory point, weakly guarded. And now they have the option to move on. On the other, I'm not totally sure though, actually. I'm a strategist. Look at that. I cannot even quite go there. I can only move here. But anyway, okay, so I'm going to move here, and that leaves me then for the next turn the option to attack down there. So actually, we won't see that big battle now. Possibly in the next turn. There's a lot to gain here for the Huns. We have 2 cities in India, which would give them 3 points. So that is definitely an area where they kind of want to intrude, but it's going to be hard for them because the Harappans also have a very modern and strong army there. So it's kind of an even battle, but maybe we're going to see some interesting events showing up. I mean, one thing is for sure, the Indian player is massively in the lead. Massively in the lead. Well, I mean, okay, let's be honest, not that much, but compared to the most other people. And these guys, the player of the Huns, is by far the last player. So I'm pretty sure some other people might throw in an event card and help the red player here to slow down this very successful empire. So we are now at the end of the turn. Not too much interesting in addition to the stuff that I already said happened. We had an equine or equine, I don't know how it's actually spelled, fever, pronounced, so it's an equine fever, I guess, which killed all the cav units in this area. That was pretty bad. The guy had a bad, what are they? Wait a second, how are they called? Yeah, a bad augury card, which cancels event cards, but he had to play that already on a barracks revolt card, which would also play it against this space, where basically his troops were split in half and fight each other, so you might lose a good amount of troops there. Finally, a flood card was played here against the Romans, where the Danube is, but the Romans had a blowback card and then played the flood here in this river here. I'm not sure which one it is. Might be the Yellow River, but I'm not sure about that. So that's a big problem now for the Chu. They have disorder in all these areas adjacent. That sucks, obviously, because they are no longer biggest now in Asia because of this disorder thing. They don't count against glory. And there are also no, obviously not biggest in the world. So they only get the points for being biggest in China and for controlling their home area. Now the thing is, it's going to be hard for them to get rid of these, especially disorder in the mountains. And also here, when you have a city and all that, here are three, no, it's actually just a one city. But here you get a forest and city. Disorder is hard to remove there. Either you do it during a civilized action, paying $7 per counter, or in a movement action, but there you need basically a number of units equal to the defense value of the territory plus 1. And cities are included there. So it's pretty rough, especially if you have a weak army and no money. Then it's hard to get rid of the disorder. So I don't know if this guy, it's hard to make that decision. Does he want to hold on to that empire or not? I mean, they still score 2 points. And if they can get rid of all this crap and the Huns eventually, I don't know, they might have a good perspective. You know, they can come back. China has a great terrain with these 3 fertile areas, and they can score a good amount of points. But yeah, it's really hard to decide. Down here, by the way, there is also a disorder in, well, the Zanga space. That was placed because there is a, I don't know, religious disorder. Egypt could do that because they're Christian. They can place a disorder marker in an enemy territory. And here there's a rules. Well, it's not clear what the rules basically, yeah, they are not really clear about that. They say when it's glory 4 areas, they say you do not count disorder markers there. You do not count areas with disorder markers. But there is another point which says then glory for homeland, and then it simply doesn't speak about this disorder thing. So maybe you could say, okay, because it doesn't explicitly speak about that in this point, the disorder doesn't count there. But I will let it count. I think it makes simply sense thematically. There is no control, in my opinion, over their home area. If there is disorder, you know, you got chaos, and on and on. So I subtracted a point from the yellow player, and so I think we're going to see the Zanga disappear in the next turn. So in the next turn, pretty much at the beginning, no empire started. We are starting just with a production action, and here now the Harappans did some magic. They played 3 cards, and none of them could actually be cancelled. First, they played the rare conjunction, which allows them to do a second action right after the first. Then he played La Patrie en Danger, which means that the new units only cost half of what they usually would cost. And then they play a brilliant financier, which simply doubles the income. So that means he earned about, I don't know, something like $44. Of course, he had to pay maintenance, but that wasn't that terrible. He then could buy tons of units. He actually has still $18. He bought the maximum possible number of units, because he can only place, he only controls basically 4 land areas. Luckily, these 3 cities here, these 3 with a value 3, allow him to place 3 units there. And in addition to that, because he is so advanced, he can buy cool units like, for example, these catapults here, or especially that, oh fuck, that guy here, you know, the legionnaire, the swordsman, is really cheap, just $2. So for him it was only $1, but in addition to that, pretty effective. So overall, he's sitting here now with a massive army. And because he did as a second action, he did a maneuver action. In addition, he placed a fortress here. So, I mean, you know, Attila is basically saying, oh, okay, man, I'm sorry, I was somewhere on the wrong way. I wanted to go left somewhere, right? It's just, don't mess with me. And that's what we see here. I'm pretty sure Attila is done with that. So I don't know what his plans are, but he's definitely not going to attack the Harappans. This is not a good idea for him, especially because his units are also not a very much advanced, and that brings him also in kind of a bad position because, you know, there are not many cities anymore here. Of course, he could go back here now to China and maybe he gets a chance to destroy a few cities there. But I think the Chinese, I don't know how long they stay there. After the disorder here, they might actually simply discard the empire, and then there's not a lot to gain for Attila. Maybe he spreads out, trying to get big. That is an option, of course, for him. At the end of the turn, I don't know, it's somewhere in the middle of the night, probably 3 o'clock or so in the morning. I have totally lost my sense of time here. What happened? Well, here, that battle didn't happen. Obviously, Attila wasn't stupid. He's a big strategist. So what he did is he moved around the forces of the Harappans. He can do 2 movement actions because he's a strategist. So he moved around and destroyed that city here in Pallava. And that was a 3 let me see, it's kind of, so that was a 3 city, which gives him 3 glory points, which is great. And what's even worse for the Harappans, they fell 3 back in progress. That's a disaster for them because, yeah, that's a big part of their glory income is progress. And now they are somewhere here in the middle of the pack. So that's not good, and it will take them a while to come back. Of course, their army is big enough, so now that they move before Attila, they can simply go there and destroy him. I mean, he could kind of retreat possibly or something, and maybe bother them a little more, but in the end it doesn't help the red player. So I'm pretty sure the Huns will be discarded. He managed to hurt him quite a bit and score 3 points now in the last turn. I think that was kind of cool. And so the Huns were doing fine. At least in a destructive way. Lots of city building over here. These guys have now already 4 cities and try to improve that. The guys from Yucatan, the inhabitants there, pay them some tribute. There was an interesting battle here between the Romans and the Carthaginians, led by Hannibal. And the Romans had clearly the advance when it comes to numbers, but Hannibal is sitting in the mountains and he has the Great Wall. So in the end, the Romans actually had to retreat. There were a bunch of battle rounds. Hannibal sacrificed single units, which allowed him then to double some values in future turns. So yeah, there we saw that retreat there, and it was it was kind of impressive to see that. We also had a battle between the Romans and the Carthaginians for Sicily, and it was a tie. So in the end, both forces died. At the beginning, there was only one Roman unit there. They managed to get reinforcements out of, played an event card, the reinforcements out of Rome. But yeah, in the end, they were not good enough. But at least the other guy also didn't get them. And they lost a ship. The Carthaginians lost a ship, which kind of hurts them. So definitely not the biggest fleet for them. We also had quite a battle here, and again we had a retreat of the Mitanni, and they also now managed, and this is, I use this retreat mechanic a little more recently, because I can see if you have 2 or 3 units, let's say you have 3 units, and you know, like the Mitanni, they have basically in many areas 2 or 3 units. Then if you basically sacrifice 1 unit, and the other guys might also not have such a big army, and he risks to commit all his units because he thinks, okay, if I want to destroy the 3 units, then I have to go all in. Then you might get a chance to take 2 of your units and move out. And now he's sitting here on 5 units. And yeah, he might do a movement action in the next turn, and then I can even see some danger for Egypt. Not a big one, but at least they might have the option to grab back here Palestine. I can definitely see that happening. Apart from that, I don't think too much interesting was going on, except for the fact that the gray player played a card that only gave the Chems, these guys here, glory points. Nobody else received glory points, and also they only received 2 glory points. He discarded, yeah, of course, the 2 were discarded. I mean, that is definitely interesting. The 2 were discarded, you know, all the disorder there that, yeah, they thought, okay, it's probably not going to be good enough to worth the effort to, you know, it will take a lot of investment to bring them back in a good position. And there are probably better options on the table. Same thing here, the Zanga, they were also discarded. Scored a few points, but with the disorder in the home area and no chance to become biggest in Africa anymore because the Egypt expanded so much, I simply discarded them, also hoping to start something more promising. So not much movement on the glory track. Still here, these 2 in the lead. And yeah, then we see pretty big gaps between the, you know, here it's 15 or something. That isn't too bad. Here just 3 points, but then it's another 12. So yeah, and I didn't do the progress yet, but now we enter this Dark Age. And it's kind of course, the Harappans are not in the lead anymore. So I don't know if people are even too interested in moving on here. It's only the Harappans who have that interest. Everybody else basically doesn't care too much about being in the lead technologically. On the other hand, here we have knights. And the knights, if you have the knights, you can modernize your chariots. And that's a big difference. So some people might clearly be interested in getting there. And yeah, another thing, we can now build these swordsmen here, which might be interesting for the Romans, but they lost a lot, you know. I mean, they once were clearly bigger and had more profitable areas. Maybe not that much, to be honest, but yeah, it feels like somehow they shrink quite a bit. So at the end of the next turn, we've seen a few more empires started. Up here, the player who controls the Romans and the Olmec, the yellow player basically, he started here the Koreans. And that is a pretty promising empire if they can deal with the Japanese, because there will be definitely a conflict between these two. They want to get their home, they want to hold their home area, want to be biggest in Northeast Asia. That's already the case. They go for progress and money. Well, obviously the Japanese also go for money, and then, I mean, it's obvious that the Koreans are interested in grabbing one or two of these super rich fertile areas here, which are right next to their door. And that is also the goal of the Japanese. They even get glory points for holding wheat. So I'm pretty sure that in the end we'll see some battle over these areas between these two countries. But right now the Koreans are quite a bit behind. Little starting money and not many great units. But still, they will already score points simply because of their because of being big in Northeast Asia. Well, big more or less, but they are the only ones there, right? Apart from that, the Armenians started. They are sitting here. And this is also an interesting empire because they are started by the red player who controls the Medes, the Huns, and yeah, the Armenians. And they want to be Christian. And well, that's going to be pretty easy for them. They can adopt Christianity from the Egypt. And if they do so, they are already the second biggest empire. They're probably not going to be the biggest one, but they can be the second biggest. So that gives them 2 points. It's not a great empire, I agree on that. Only 2 points, and even that will cost them a little bit of an effort, because I think they will end up first with a disorder marker in their space, and because adopting a religion gives you that, so they got to remove the disorder before they actually, or they got to prepare themselves to remove the disorder. So they somehow try to get a few bucks, $7, before they then can try this process here. I don't know how good that is, but there was no alternative for this guy at the moment. The player who controlled the Chu and who discarded them, he wanted to start in China all over again. He played the Han, but another guy played a shooting star, which is simply an event card which immediately discards newly started empires. So that was a bit of a bummer for this guy and screwed his plans pretty badly. Apart from that, well, we've seen some production actions. The Carthaginians produced an elephant, for example, which is good against cavalry. So did the Egypt. So there is definitely danger here for these guys. The Celts spread out, are now becoming quite big in Europe, and we see now maybe the well, the Finns, you know, they might not be now be in some decline here. I'm not sure yet, but I can see some dangers now on the horizon for them. This is simply a more, well, dynamic empire. They have these big sources of income. They have a strategist. They can, well, not necessarily grab the more modern units, but I think in the end they are just in a better position on the long run. But the question is, are they interested in destroying the Finns, or are they going more for the Romans, because that might help the Carthaginians more, and they play together. So tough call here. Over here we see more and more city building, and these guys are now already the second best empire when it comes to city values. And now they finally managed to get into the second age, which will allow them to upgrade cities, which is even more effective. And right now they gain 1 point for being the second best and second in city values. Only the Japanese are better. And well, if they upgrade their cities, they will be the best. So, and then this is a pretty solid empire. They score then 4 points, I think. That's really good. The Egyptians are extremely strong. They scored their full potential, basically, except for the fact that someone played the glory card, which halves the glory of all empires, which sucks. But still, Egyptians are now in this situation, as you can see here. They control their home country, biggest in Africa, including the sea areas. They are even now the biggest of the world, which gives them another 2 points. If not with the sea areas, the Finns are the biggest, and they score only for the land areas. So therefore, both are in their way the biggest in the world. And they get also the 2 points for holding the most artifacts. So this is super powerful. That gives them overall, usually would give them 6 points, but in this specific case with this glory card, it's only 3 points. Big surprise here. There was an attack by the Harappans against Attila, and they screwed up. Attila had an event card. It was the Schwerpunkt card, which basically simply doubles all the combat values of one player. And yeah, that was a bloody battle, but in the end, the Harappans lost their complete army. And that leaves them now obviously in big danger. You know, I can't see, I'm not sure. They're gonna produce now, but they lost this fertile area here, including their great city. So but they still have some money left here, quite a bit. So they can still produce and place 3 units here and a few other units, but in the end, I don't know if that's gonna be enough to survive that attack of the Huns. They could recover in a way, at least, if once they kill the Huns, if they manage to do that, which I doubt, they can recover back to a 2-point empire fairly quickly. Being big in India and holding their homeland is easy. But the other problem is, of course, getting back on the trade track. But on the other hand, you know, they do one really successful trade with a more advanced empire, for example, they could be back on top pretty soon. So it's not over for them yet, but it now depends pretty much on the next move. Another interesting event was played up here. Fires in Japan. 3 disorder markers in important areas. That will slow them down. They probably have to pay to get rid of them. And yeah, that means they cannot they cannot move. They cannot move into these fertile areas. They cannot go into the sea to get points for being powerful at sea. They will lose money, which also gives them points. So that was a nasty event for the Japanese, which will cost them definitely a lot of glory points. And that's the thing in this game, you know, if you are in the lead, all the other players will throw rocks at you, and that is, yeah, that can be a rough time. Okay, I'm kind of in the middle of a turn. I'm going to take a break here now, and before I forget what happened, I want to kind of show you what it was. We've seen basically no new empire showed up, but oh, actually that's not true. Down here, the Sinhalese showed up. The player of the Chu, he played the Sinhalese over here. They want to hold their home country, India, and they want to be good in the world. And with all the trouble that the Harappans went through, I think this is now a good time to start a new empire in India. So yeah, they're not super strong right now, but I mean, just a few units, pretty basic, not that much starting money, but we'll see. There is room to improve, I guess. Two big battles happened. By the way, I realized that Japan is part of Northeast Asia. Even these small islands back there are over here. Oops. Sorry, I nearly fell on the board. Okay, so basically, it's going to be much harder for the Koreans to be first in Northeast Asia. There is such a massive competition between them and the Japanese. They're going to compete for richness and for this, for Northeast Asia. So that is definitely, these are real rivals now there. But that's a good thing, you know, because until now, the Japanese could basically do their own thing up there, and now it's going to be a little more interesting. We've seen two big battles. One was right here for Syria against the Mitanni, and that was super close. In the end, it was just basically 1 point. The Egypt didn't commit all of their units in the first turn, and the Mitanni came up with a nice card, a barrage card, which basically doubled their support values. And yeah, in the end it came just down to a single point, but the Egypt managed to win, and therefore then it was over for the Mitanni. I mean, their bigger army was destroyed. The Egypt played an overrun and managed to do another maneuver right away, and yeah, that was no big deal at all. Now they're just sitting here. The Mitanni have 1 unit left in Mesopotamia. In a way, that's even worse. I mean, although that's not true, he wanted the Mitanni to survive this turn, because in the next turn he can then discard the Mitanni, and then in the turn after that he will be the first player to go, and then he can start a new empire, because this is one of these empires where that all players, one of these colors that all players can choose. So it kind of was super important for him that the Mitanni survived this turn, and it looks like they can. It pretty much looked like that. Yeah, I think they will. Maybe someone plays a crazy event card or something, but I'm pretty sure they will survive. The other thing was here in India, the Harappans had a nice army. They managed to rebuild some interesting units. They ended up with a fairly nice army here of 4 units. There was a fortress, there was a 3 city. So that wasn't easy to take. But Attila took the risk anyway. I mean, he didn't have much to lose at that point. And he played an outflanked card, which simply halves the value of the Harappan units, and that was then simply too much. I mean, that they couldn't stand him anymore. They were wiped out here, which gave Attila 3 points and threw them further back in progress. Then Attila, as a strategist, went to Sind and attacked their capital, where there were only 2 units, so no match here. And that was only a 1 city, but they dropped back into the older age. So that means Attila get an additional 2 points for that. So he scored 6 points with the Huns, which was a really good result. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of tricky. Do they want to try to survive? Maybe become big in India? But, you know, I don't really think so. Their goal would be, if they cannot destroy any more cities, which is not possible at the moment, there is nothing in the area here, they could either try to simply grow, and they get 3 points for being the biggest in the world. But that's all they get. The problem is, the Medes, for example, they also want to be the biggest in Asia and the world, and they are in a much better position here. They are already fairly spread out, so basically he would just be his own rival. And there are in addition these Indian guys here, so if he spreads out now, I don't know. I'm pretty sure what we're going to see is that he simply will get discarded and we start another unit, another empire. But that was definitely an amazing move for him. And overall, it was so impressive what they did. You know, I mean, they just wiped out the Chinese, the Chu dynasty, and they wiped out the Harappans. These were 2 of the most powerful empires. And yeah, and I love the way these horse people, I don't know how they're called in English, right? But I love the way how these kind of people are implemented in the game, you know, that just ride through the steps, destroying everything out there. I think that is just fantastically done, and it can really change the shape of the world like it really did. Oh, and another thing, Hannibal has taken goal now. He wanted to bring the elephants, obviously, with him, but they couldn't make it across the mountains. They were simply too slow. But he chose to actually try it anyway. He had 3 units in there. He's a tactician. The Romans only had 2 units in there, so he said, "Hey, come on, I have good odds to make it, and before the units can again produce and just get better strength, I want to try to capture goal." So that's what he did. And now you can clearly see a difference here, right? I mean, Carthage is pretty powerful, and the Romans are really, you know, they are just kind of a regional power in a way, at least, right? And Egypt is now really impressive. You know, this is really a world power now. They are absolutely at the height of their power. They control. They even spread out a little more here. They control big parts of Africa, super big. They control 3 sea areas. They control now parts of the Middle East. They have the most artifacts. It's insane. I mean, totally. They dominate the world at the moment. They are now, I think, even. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they might hold now more land areas than the Finns do, although I'm not totally sure about that. The Finns also produced, which might give them the option to also spread out a little more, maybe even fight the Celts a little bit down there, but they cannot just sit there anymore and watch, right? That's what they did. They were just basically this sitting giant, you know. They did nothing and scored their 3 points. Nobody was interested in going there. It's really hard to hurt them there. The fires could have done something maybe, but there is no river, no flood, no disorder was possible to be placed there. So they basically did nothing through the whole 2 ages and just waited and scored their 3 points. But now things change a little bit. You know, the Celts here are getting stronger and they're pushing north, and simply other empires are growing in size, and the Medes here and of course the Egypt, they're just getting too big now. Turn, an interesting civilized action by the Romans here. You can see tons of counters here in this area on the map. Now the Romans built a forum, which basically allows them to save a turn and then later do 2 turns right one after another. That can be very powerful in the right moment. They now have Caesar. That was one of their main goals for this civilized action. They wanted a leader which can deal with Hannibal, which has the same abilities, and Caesar does. Technically, he's even better. He is also a populist. So yeah, we got Caesar now. And the cool thing is we have here the forum. I already said that. We have the great library from earlier on. We've built paved roads. So they are now on this technology track. The Romans have them. The others only get them if they pass this space here. So nobody can actually play them anymore now, right? They are played by the Romans, and the others simply get them by getting more progressive. And then we have the Christianity that was also adopted by the Romans. So that means the Romans now have all of a sudden also 4 artifacts. And that means because the Romans usually go before the Egypt, they are now the biggest when it comes to artifacts. Not in this turn though, but in future turns that will be the case. That is pretty awesome for them. So I can see a rebirth of Rome here. And I can see that at least coming. They also found a silver mine, and that gave them a good amount of money. So yeah, I guess we will see a good production by the Romans, and maybe then kind of a fight with the Carthaginians, and maybe they can fight them back and recapture the western part of Europe here. Well, technologically, we're sitting now in this dark age. We have already a big stack of units here, and the only people that are really interested in moving on are the Koreans. They get points for being the most sophisticated, but they have some other problems. First they have to kind of establish their empire before the Japanese will show up here on the Chinese shore. So I think we'll see also some kind of production going on there first, and I don't know when they can start actually trading. So there are a few things. I'm basically done with this turn, but I'm not totally done because what just happened was too impressive. So I wanna go show a little bit. So first of all, what happened during the turn? Well, no new empires showed up. Some small battle up here, but maybe an important one over here. The Celts were able to take this area here, Muscovy. And I mean, it becomes more and more clear that the early Finns are getting trouble here, right? I mean, they are slowly losing their influence. And it's not like, okay, nobody touches us. They just kind of cracking down here. We've seen impressive production actions by the Armenians. They had that, I think it was a gold or a silver mine, and they managed to build a big stack here. And they kind of have this interesting decision to make. They can go north, try to get these very, very valuable areas here. But they don't necessarily need them that much. They want to be big in Asia. But on the other hand, it also gives them point to be the biggest and second biggest Christian country. And, you know, if they want to go big in Asia, they sooner or later they're going to have to face the Egypt. And that's not going to be easy. On the other hand, they have a massive force here. So, I don't know. But it's not the most advanced force. I'm not sure what's going to happen. You know, if they go in this direction, they probably will have to face the Romans sooner or later. And that's the point. That's the other point. The Romans are super strong now. They did a production. And, I mean, it's just insane. You know, most of these areas have 4, some even 5 units. We see fortresses here in Rome and in Cisalpine. This is it, you know, Carthage will not get into this area. On the contrary, the Romans will definitely do some kind of reconquista here and try to destroy the Carthaginian units and probably also some of the Celtic guys here. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see a big future of Rome here. But it's not that easy. It's not that easy because, well, another thing is, let one thing after another. Here, more civilization actions, and now these guys are at the point where they control the most city values. And therefore, they can now also make the most points possible for them. That would be 4 points. That's the maximum they can score. So that's where they are now. And, well, then it's the Egyptians, and they now do a civilized action. And what we see is actually more than impressive. First of all, I mean, actually the Koreans, they had a pretty bumpy start. The Japanese did an invasion there. The Koreans lost their force in here. And that was pretty bad. But now look, hey, what about Japan, right? It's all empty, except for this little guy up here. What happened? Well, we had a pestilence going on there. And basically, all of these guys were just wiped out. And that was just, actually, I think I forgot even to reduce these cities. I think they're also simply gone. I'm not totally, I think that one remained, but that one, these two are just gone. So this is just totally crazy. Japan is basically empty. Which kind of poses the question, I mean, they control these 2 areas, which are rich areas. Do they want to go for rebuilding, you know? They have their ships, or 2 ships. They have a few guys there. Do they want to try to rebuild? It's a good empire, you know. It has a lot of cool features going on. And they hold these 2 wheat, which means at the moment they would actually even gain 1 point. One of them would be subtracted because they don't control their home area anymore, but they would still gain a point. So maybe they should actually even try to come back. They have a bit of money here. So it's kind of an interesting thing, you know, although it looks crazy, but I think I would not let go of Japan at that point. I think there is still a chance that they can come back. But it's getting even more crazy. We see the urban riots here. And that means reduce all level 3, 5, and 7 cities in a target empire by 1 level. Place a disorder marker in each affected area. So the question is, where do we want to do that? There are basically two really interesting aspects. One is these Olmec up here by the yellow player. The brown player is playing that, by the way. He's playing that event. So it's more or less impossible to hurt the green player. Mitanni are done anyway, and these guys basically have no cities. So that doesn't make any sense. He did hurt the green player already quite a bit by screwing Japan. But now he might consider, hey, you know, the next one in line is the yellow guy. So I'm considering either really fucking up these guys, because they get a lot of points for big cities, or the Romans. Because, but I'm not sure about that. That's the thing. Because what I have here is, I got the Empire Collapses card, which is crazy. Play this to destroy all units, leaders, forts, and artifacts in every disordered area in target empire. Put a disorder marker in all remaining land areas in the empire. You know, I mean, this is... this is pretty brutal, and maybe it's the best I can do, because these guys, if I don't stop them now, they will just go through the roof, right? I mean, that is a fact. I didn't know that, but what I can I mean, the player doesn't know that, but Carthage is actually preparing to discard this empire. And maybe even the Celts, because as a matter of fact, these are, you know, they're scoring really poor points. But if this, and then these guys are going to go through the roof, they're going to control total Europe, and, you know, they're going to have culture, Europe, their hometown, and sooner or later they probably also get the wheat in here in Ukraine and whatnot. And maybe in the end they might even come for Egypt. So that is definitely, I think I want to go with the latter. I'm going to do the urban riots. Going to reduce the 3 and 5 cities by 1. Now that alone doesn't seem too impressive. So this goes down, and this goes down. But it's the combination that is the problem. And I just wonder if this guy has any defense against that, and actually he doesn't. So place a disorder marker in each affected area. So let's do that. So, and now we're going to play the Empire Collapses. Play this to destroy all units, leaders, forts, and artifacts in every disordered area in target empire. Put a disorder marker in all remaining land areas in the empire. Okay, so that means Rome gone. Totally. Great Library burned down. Caesar, well, I guess crucified. The Forum destroyed by the mob, and all this gone, this fortress destroyed, and this fortress destroyed. Actually, I wonder what that is. That shouldn't be there. I have no fucking clue what that does here. Okay, so let's get some, and then disorder in all the other areas. Holy crap. Made it to the end of that age. Took me a long time. Not sure, maybe, it's really hard to say, but I think I might have been maybe 12 hours playing that age. You know, it's I'm playing a lot right now. As I said, it's this Corona time, so basically I'm nearly playing all day, and it's really weird times. My you know, my daily structure is completely messed up. I'm playing all through the night, and then in the morning I go to bed, and after a few hours I wake up again, I start playing. When I'm tired I go to bed somewhere in the middle of the day. It's really pretty crazy. I don't know, but it's fun, and I will probably will never experience a time like that in my life again. So got to see the positive side. So what happened? Yeah, as I said, this is now left from the Roman Empire. It's actually not as terrible as it might seem. I mean, it's pretty bad, but at least these two areas can be taken back. There are a lot of soldiers left here. And the Romans also have money to do a civilized action and at least buy 2 regions free of disorder. So in the end, they probably end up with 4 regions which are basically working. But it kind of depends how quick now, for example, Carthage will react, or maybe the Celts, and if they manage to, you know, finish them off. I don't know that. Thought about discarding Carthage. Obviously now, after the development here, the player decided not to do so and instead continue pushing on here. The Harappans were discarded, so there is nothing left here anymore. And the Huns were also discarded. We were also sitting here. So now at the end of the age, we're seeing these kind of weird, vast areas here empty. India, China, just a little bit left here. It's a little odd. And Japan up there in the north. So pretty devastating events in these empires, and of course Rome. So it's a kind of an interesting way to get into the Dark Age now here and the Middle Ages. By far, at that point, the most advanced and most successful empire is Egypt. There is no doubt. They now adopted democracy, and I don't know how they can be killed. I mean, sooner or later they will come up with some crap, the players, I guess. But it is, some things like that, these empire collapses things or something. But it's hard to do it, and especially also because of the Great Pyramid, they kind of protect them a little bit, at least these center areas, against disorder. But it won't stand forever, and at some point it will fall apart. By the way, there is now Cleopatra, a leader. Sadly, Hannibal died of old age. It would now be, of course, he would be needed now to attack the Romans, but, well, Caesar is also dead. Well performing is also these guys here, the Olmec. Now with all their cities, they're doing really well. And the champs, they're also scoring their full points. 4 points basically. 1 for their hometown, 1 for being the richest, and 1 for Southeast Asia. These are the only 3 empires right now, the Olmec, the Egypt, and the Chams, that really score full points. And the Medes are actually close. They are biggest in Asia. They are only second biggest in the world, but they're also scoring 3 points, so they're not doing that bad. But yeah, many empires are just pretty under pressure now, and they slowly start to recover, and we see where all this goes. The Finns probably won't last for that long. I doubt that they will survive the Middle Ages. And yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting development here between Carthage, Rome, and the Celts. One or two of them will probably also go away, and the Armenians, we'll see what happens with them. Okay, so I'm gonna load this up now. So it's been a long one, and yeah, hope to see you on the next video or on lonesomegamer.com. Bye.